Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frankly podcast. I am really thrilled. In fact, I'm really touched, Sarah, to have you here today because you and I have been on a journey, like a personal one, and I've known you for quite a few years now. So I'm absolutely thrilled, not least because of the personal connection, but also because of the great work that you do. And we'll get to that in a minute. But for people who are out there watching or listening, I'm really thrilled to have Sarah Hill with me today. She is CEO of IDAS, a specialist charity supporting thousands of domestic and sexual violence survivors every year. Sarah, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Jen. It's really lovely to be here with you. And as you say, we've been on a journey, haven't we, for many, many
Yeah.
years. And really proud to know you as well. And
Oh,
proud to be here to talk to you today about my, I suppose, leadership journey. So thank you for
yeah.
inviting me.
And we'll get into the leadership journey in a minute, but I think just to say, obviously, your charity that you're currently CEO of, IDAS, supported me many years ago with a police investigation and a court case. So it's a charity that's really dear to my heart. And this is a topic that sadly is not going away. You know, that would be a nice place to be, wouldn't it, if we didn't need IDAS charities? But sadly we do. So for people who don't know you and don't know the charity, do you want to tell us a little bit about you and the charity and the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I've been involved in the charity for probably about 15 years now, and we provide all sorts of support for survivors and victims. So that's victims and survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence. We provide emergency accommodation. We can support people to court. We run a family and children's program now, supporting those families where children have witnessed domestic abuse and might be impacted by that. We have helplines, live chat, really nice websites with lots of information in. And we've most recently started to develop our own property. So we were lucky
Brilliant.
to get some social investment funding to buy properties. So that's given us a bigger scope really to work with those families that need to escape violence.
Brilliant. And you have your own podcast as well, because I'm about to be interviewed for it, I think.
Yeah, we do. That's a development. So we've been working with a brilliant survivor engagement network now for a couple of years, and it's grown and grown and grown. And survivors absolutely want their voices heard. Whether
Quite
that's
right.
about the lack of justice for them, or things that are happening in the family court arena, or how they feel that they've been treated by social services. So we've developed these podcasts to really focus in on survivors' stories, because the other thing about that is that other survivors out there who might not have come forward to support, will more likely kind of engage if they hear from
Yeah.
survivors that have been through those
Yeah.
systems and are out the other side to some degree. So yeah, we've got our own podcast, we've got our own webinars, so doing lots and lots of stuff that's really exciting.
It is. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's just amazing to see how you've grown beyond, that just like this, what I call that like emergency service offering, where you're in the middle of the
Mm,
incident, the event, the investigation, but the wraparound care that's needed for people who've gone through this. It's really lovely to see
absolutely.
that.
And I suppose I started my journey as a refuge worker years and years ago, really thinking 30 years ago, this we shouldn't have to provide these services for in the next 30 years or 40 years. So I'm very committed to that prevention and education and helping people at an earlier stage wherever possible as well.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to try to change society and try to
Yeah.
change at least families' lives if you can't change the whole of society. So something I'm really committed in.
Oh, brilliant. Well, you've given us a beautiful segue into the leadership question. So,
Thank you.
and 30 years ago, I'm going to start there. So, I ask everybody this question: when you were young, was it ever on your career vision board that you thought one day I might be a leader?
No, absolutely not. I thought, right, what do I want to do? I want to do something that I really care about. I was a little feminist in the 1980s, so I really cared about kind of women's rights. I think, like most of us, I'd known people in my own family that had experienced domestic abuse. I thought it was a real sense of injustice that women at that time couldn't get access to support, couldn't get access to leaving those relationships. So I just wanted to do something good, I suppose. I wanted to do something I was interested in, and got a job as a children's worker actually in a women's refuge to start with. So didn't have leadership on my mind at all. And in fact, when I first started, women's refuges tended to be run as collectives. So there was no
Ah,
leadership in place. I mean, there was always power,
Yes.
And sometimes there was an imbalance of that. So this idea that collectives were run and people were equal, you quickly kind of realised that that wasn't the case when you got into one. But yeah, I joined a collective at early doors, really.
Oh, brilliant. So in that journey then, what was your first kind of leadership? I'm doing the hyphenations with my fingers, but what was the first role that you did that kind of gave you some leadership responsibility, and what was that like
Yeah,
for you?
I suppose within that collective setting, I quickly realised that I had to take responsibility for my own work. That if I wanted to make changes as well, I had to put myself forward. That if I had good ideas, I had to be open about those. That no one else was kind of going to do it for me. And when the organisation I was working for became a hierarchy, decided that we needed to employ a manager and a kind of team leader. After a few years working there as a refuge worker, I became a team leader. And I think really the journey into that was because I knew that I was happy to put myself forward. I was happy to try to support others as well. And I felt that I had something to give and value
Mm.
in that role. So that's what happened.
And
And I was on a program.
I love that you said something a minute ago about that you realised really quickly that no one was coming to help you, that you needed to kind of crack on and figure some stuff out. And I think that's a really important message for everybody in work, isn't it? That you are responsible for you and your career, well, like whatever you decide to do with it, whether you become a leader or not. I had the first mentor I ever had. I remember him saying to me, there's a swear word incoming. No one will ever give a shit about your career as much as you should, and nobody is going to put you first because they're all too busy thinking about their own stuff. So you have to take care of you and your career and make sure that you're, taking responsibility for, the way you want to show up and the kind of person you want to be in the workplace. And I've never forgotten it. It was like such an important
It
lesson.
really is an absolutely key message, isn't it? And to take, I suppose, responsibility for yourself moves you from a place potentially of helplessness to a place of empowerment, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it's important, there's loads of research out there, isn't it? That the more control that you can have over your own work, the happier you are in
Yeah.
work. And I
Yeah.
always think about that as well in my role as leader. The more
Yeah.
I can kind of hand people power and responsibility, the happier they are and the more that they can kind of take that responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So thinking more broadly about the word leader, what does that actually mean to you? Because it can be all things to all people, can't it?
Gosh, yeah. Yeah, I was talking to a colleague about this a couple of days ago, and she was reflecting that she'd asked someone in her team what the word leader meant, and they very much focused on activities and actions. And I very
Oh,
much think of it in terms of authenticity and integrity and accountability and taking
traits and
responsibility.
behaviours.
Yeah, so the values and the traits and the behaviours. But it is interesting how other people see it as well as someone that will take action.
Yes.
We will make things right. We will do that. So I think that's an important part of being a leader, to take considered choices and to take actions and to develop strategies based on your knowledge and based on talking to stakeholders. But I think for me, the big thing about being a successful leader is having that integrity of taking responsibility, of being accountable,
Yeah,
of acting in that way.
yeah, yeah. Lovely. I love that. So, what, if anything, do you love about being a leader? Because it can be hard, can't it?
Yeah, I think it can be quite isolating, Jen, to be
Mm,
CEO, to be a leader.
mm.
Uh, because I think sometimes you do have to, in a charity, you've obviously got your board of trustees who are ultimately responsible, and you've got your operational team, and you do sort of have to interact somewhere in between those two things
Yeah,
sometimes, and sometimes take difficult decisions. But what do I love about being a leader? Was that your
yeah,
question?
yeah. What, if
I
anything?
sensed I was going down a negative place then.
We'll come to
Yeah,
that in
I
a
mean,
minute.
it's wonderful to be able to, in my charity, to be able to develop the charity, to be able to imagine the impacts that my behaviour in terms of getting commission services, getting social investment, being part of that,
Yeah,
can have on those survivors and victims that we're helping. So I've moved obviously from that support role, which I think is interesting because I remember first becoming a manager and very removed from the support work and really missing that, really
yeah,
missing getting a sense of how we were helping and supporting families and individuals, to kind of doing those reports for commissioners and writing funding bids.
Yeah.
And I sort of resented it for a year or so, but I think I'm very much now in the place that I can look at the bigger picture, I can influence strategy, I can be around the table with commissioners, with other stakeholders, with MPs, and really kind of bring to life that voice that I hear from my practitioners and our workforce here. So it's a very privileged position, I think, to be in.
Yeah, I love what you've just said there. It's not come up on any other podcast yet, so like, well done, big tick, because we've got a new, a new insight in here. But that
Thank
thing
you.
of, for many people, when they get into management and then kind of leading as well, like the more you get into it, the further away from the front line you get. That point that you made, and I remember that. I think like you have that, you get to a point in your career where you're sort of like a subject matter expert and you're in it and you get really good at it. And then the more management and leadership, the further away you get from the thing that you really cared about in the first place. And it can
Absolutely.
be a really tricky transition on that front. And I don't think people realise that it will take them, because you have to create more time to do other things, don't you, when you take on management responsibilities?
Definitely. And then it's really important, isn't it, to really try to get insight back into that, the value of the work you're doing, or the value
Yeah,
of the services you're providing, or whatever it is, whichever sphere you're in. It's taking that time as a leader to really appreciate that and hear from those people that are delivering those services still, and the
yeah,
recipients of them.
yeah. Without micromanaging them or trying to do their
Yes.
job for them.
I mean, that's the other big thing that I've learned actually over the years. Because I've come through our services, I've provided our services. That kind, I can be quite operational in focus, and that can be
Yeah,
really, really irritating
yeah,
sometimes.
team.
And I'm not always right.
Yeah,
Learning that you're not always right and you've not always got the best ideas, I think, is
yeah,
a key thing as a leader to learn.
it is. So we've looked at what you love, what feels tricky for you, or yeah,
Um,
what's been the hardest thing?
yeah, I suppose for me, the frustrating things are, I think, not being able to get all of the funding that our services need, not being able to support everyone that we should be able to support. And I think feels to me as well that, I mentioned that, 30 years ago, as a young activist, I didn't think that we'd need services that we still need in 30 years' time. So it feels frustrating that we've not moved forward as a society, that we've not really kind of set a mark in the sand to say, violence against women and girls, no, we're going to have to move forward from that point and really change society and change the way that we think about gender roles and those sorts of things. So that's frustrating on a sort of more national level. I
Yeah,
think for me as well, sometimes I still do become frustrated by the fact that I perhaps don't have as much insight now as I used to have into the actual work, into the actual impacts. I can be bogged down with thinking about strategy, thinking about which stakeholder meeting I'm going to, thinking about which commissioner I need to talk to, about which funding stream, and you lose sight sometimes then of the survivor voice. I'm always brought down to earth by our survivor engagement network, or by a complaint, or
yeah,
by something that happens that I
yeah,
need to kind of take note of. But I think that can be quite frustrating sometimes, not
yeah.
having that time.
It's a hard balance, I think, as a leader, isn't it? Because the like keeping a foot in the operations is too loose a word for what I'm trying to say, but keeping a foot in the kind of like staying close to the customer or staying
Mm.
close to the client or staying close to the edge of the purpose where you deliver it. Plus also having, it's like trying to do the splits, because you've also got to have a foot in the future, thinking about financial sustainability, security, how you need to evolve the organization for the future that's coming, and being able to have a foot in both without actually going into the splits is hard,
Definitely.
isn't it?
It is. It is. It's really and I think that's really key, Jen, isn't it? Trying to get that kind of how much you look into the future, how much you're looking into your crystal ball, and how much time you spend on developing future plans, and how much then you're responding to, I suppose, for us, the crisis that we sometimes see. For us,
Yeah,
for example, I don't want to go back into COVID necessarily because it's many years now from there, but we saw a massive increase in people needing our services the year after COVID, and it
yeah,
really kind of had a knock-on effect on in terms of what we could provide and how we could provide that support. So it is about that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Investing time to think about what would be great in the future and what do we need to do now.
Yeah. And something else, it's actually not in my list of questions, but I think it's really important. The concept of resilience has come up quite a lot with other interviews we've done. And you're our first charity CEO. And one of the things that I just wanted to ask was that whole thing of 30 years ago, I hoped we wouldn't need us, that we'd have moved on,
Mm.
that violence would be better, that we would be looking after each other and treating each other with better respect. How and that frustration of oh, have we really moved on? Because I hear that in other social movements as well. When I'm climate crisis is another
Yeah.
one, and when you're dealing with that frustration of why are things not changing fast enough or good enough? How do you stay resilient within that as a leader?
I think for me it is about understanding the massive crucial impact you're making to each family. So if you can help make those positive changes just for one person, that then will potentially impact on their wider social network, on their families, on their
Yeah.
children. So that's what I always go back to, I suppose, the absolute importance of the work that we do in the crisis work, whilst keeping in mind that the prevention work, the education work is hugely
Yeah.
important, but it's almost aspirational,
Yeah.
whereas the work that you're doing to support someone is real.
And the
It's
grassroots.
true for them, and the quality's got to be there for them. So I suppose that sort of keeps me going when I get frustrated about some of the problems that we encounter, as well as some of the systems that we encounter that still aren't right for victims and survivors. Some of the huge problems in, for instance, the criminal justice system, how long it takes for people to get justice.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't get
Don't get
justice, and it's
justice.
so awful
Yeah.
that they've not got
Yeah.
justice, even though they've put themselves forward to, report an incident or report a case. So, but at the end of it, I think if I ever feel down, I think about all of those people that we are supporting that have moved somewhere better,
Yeah.
that are more positive in their lives, and the impact that that will have on their little community, on their little society as well, is
Yeah.
important, isn't it? It's a
Super
bit like
important.
making those small changes for the environment locally, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
You think, oh my
You're
God,
right.
the world's
Doing recycling.
awful. Yeah, but if you do recycling, if you join a community gardening group, if you do things that are good for your local community,
Yeah.
it sort of can spiral outwards, I think.
Yeah. It's the ripple effect. I was keep thinking it's like popping a pebble in a. Pick up one pebble, that's a person I'm dealing with, and send them off, pop them back into the water in a better way. And that ripple effect of, trusting that the good work you've done can spread beyond.
Definitely.
And then, yeah, that piece about cultivating more and more. Where can I have control? Where do I have authority? Right, I can take charge of my recycling. So what else can I do better in that
Yeah.
sense? Yeah, brilliant. So what's the biggest lesson that you think you've learned so far about leader? I'm sure there's more than one, but what's the big one? What's been the big one?
Gosh. Um, this changes in my mind whenever I think about it. But I think it's about listening to others.
Yeah.
It really is key to sort of understand other people's positions and to be able to change your mind about your position on that
Yes.
basis. And that's not a fault and it's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Yeah.
And I think I've done a lot of that learning over a number of years, not having to always be right, not having to always be best, and to bring in those people with different views as well, to be comfortable with different views. I was talking to a leadership coach about a year ago now, and he said, really, in terms of succession planning, you should always look for people that you feel are better than you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
lots of leaders don't do that, I think.
Yeah.
They don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable in that space to surround themselves with people that
Yeah.
have those talents or have different talents and different views. And I think I've learned that and I'm still learning it.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. And one of my favourite sayings is from To Kill a Mockingbird, where he says, Atticus says to his daughter, to really understand another person, you've got to be prepared to walk a mile in their shoes. And like no surprises, I got into coaching because when I did my coach training, which I was a leader actually, it was about adding coaching into my leadership toolkit. That's the whole premise of coaching. It's like stop thinking that what works for you will work for somebody else, like really put yourself into their world and have a good look around and think about what, get to know your people and what's going on for them, what motivates
Yeah.
them. And that, for me, I certainly became a much better leader when I stopped thinking the pressure needed to be on me to tell someone or support them, and actually just started to get curious and ask some good questions. And like
Yeah.
you say, learn to listen properly, which most people don't know how to do.
Yeah. They don't. And I'm still learning that as well. So I can still
I
jump
am.
in, over talk
I think we
someone.
all can. So looking to the future then, what qualities and skills do you think leaders need to be like turning the dial up on?
Yeah, I think we do need to be agile, and we also need to think about what's coming down the line for young people, don't we? The
Yeah,
growth of AI, the growth of technology, the climate issues. So although in my space I'm concerned about violence and abuse, it's thinking about how those other things impact in my world and how my world impacts on those other things as well. So making sure that I keep abreast of everything that's coming down the line. And yeah, to be able to be responsive, but also to be able to be engaged with the community and with young people as well. I mean, I'm an old fart now.
no, yeah,
It's
no,
thinking about how you hear the voices of young people and get
yeah,
their genuine concerns. When I was growing up, I was absolutely scared to death about rabies. Do you remember there's like to get
yes,
rabies
yes,
adverts going on, or nuclear war? It's
yeah,
completely changed now for young people, hasn't it? And the
yeah,
pressures that they face with technology, social media, all of those sorts of things. You've got to kind of keep attuned, I suppose, to what young people are feeling, and therefore change and adapt your services and approach as you kind of consider that.
yeah. Well, it's more of that being in their shoes again, isn't it? Rather than assuming you know the answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. And we all need support at some point. So as a leader, where do you go for support? What support do you get?
I think it's brilliant to have the support of peers, isn't it? And to have
Yeah,
mentoring in place, but also the support for me in my charity sector. It's important to have the support of the board, and to be able to show your own weaknesses and your own need for support as well. That's another thing that I've learned over time.
yeah,
You don't always have to be this kind of person that's all the answers that will be strong for everyone. It's fine to be able to say, look, I just need to talk to you about this, and I'm not really clear on that. It's absolutely fine to do that, and get that support around you. I think some of the best support I've had is from other CEOs of charities, smaller charities, people like you working in the sector. If I think about support, I think it's great if people have coaching. It's great if
yeah,
people have counselling. It's something that every leader should be open to, and also to tell their staff and their teams as well. Because
yeah,
I think in my world, a lot of people feel um, that they should be brave and they shouldn't need to access sort of clinical supervision or clinical support. And I think it's very important as a leader to set that tone and say it's absolutely fine. In fact, it's
yeah,
more than fine to
yeah.
have that support and need that support.
Yeah, that's that myth of competence, isn't it?
Yeah,
The myth that I need to be seen to be competent all the time. Well, when actually I would say that in certain professions, certainly in mine, supervision is essential. Like what kind of coach are you if you're not having supervision? If you're
yeah.
working in the developmental space, you're working with people's tender territories often, and you guys are in that day in day out. Like you need to have safe spaces where you can just unpack it all.
Mhm. Definitely, definitely.
Yeah, essential. And is there anyone that's inspired you in terms of being a good leader along your leadership journey?
Gosh, there's so many people that are inspiring. I think for me, I probably look to people close to me to give me inspiration, and that can be people within my team. It can be people within my family. I'm not a sort of person that has great admiration for celebrities or for people out there in the
Yeah,
public limelight. I get inspiration from people that I know,
yeah.
from people that are showing integrity, that are quietly getting on with things, that are taking responsibility. How about you, Jen? That's an interesting one. I'm going to put it back to you. Who do you get
No
inspiration
one's
from?
ever done that. Where do I take? I take some of my inspiration from. Um, I want to say writers, but that's probably doing them a disservice. So people like Brené Brown, who is a big
Mhm.
hero of mine, her work on vulnerability and courage. So she's more of a social researcher and a professor. So people like her have really inspired me because they've really shaped my work. And well, they've shaped how I've shown up. I mean, her book helped me get through the court case that I was doing, supported by IDAS. So, and it was Daring Greatly, a book, walking through WH Smith's in Leeds train station and just seeing this book, and it said Daring Greatly on the front, and I was waiting to hear whether we were going to court, and I was like, bloody hell, I need that
Yeah.
book. I remember, and it was like a life-changing book for me. So people like Brené, who I think are on the edge of research about humans. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm fascinated by humans more than anything else. Like, why do we do the things that we do? So the research inspires me a lot. Um, but a bit like you, I'm not really into the celebrity people because I just think we only see one side of them. So how can we know the whole person? I'm more inspired by the people who are kind of quietly random acts of kindness and courage in corners and getting on
Yeah.
with their life and trying to take responsibility for it. Those people inspire me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
I
kind
suppose
of
that
quiet
for me,
activism.
yeah, quiet activism, and also some of the survivors that we work with in terms of the journeys that they've been on and where they've ended,
Yeah,
or where they're going to. It's
yeah,
just so inspirational that people show such courage and resilience in the face of such adversity.
yeah. I
Really
think
inspiring.
my clients as well. I like when I'm working with a team, senior team that have been bimbling along with their egos for years, and then they suddenly decide to get brave and courageous and be vulnerable with each other, or an individual I'm coaching and they, open up in the session. I just find that massively inspiring because I know it takes a great deal of courage to do that, but I also know it's super transformative out the other side.
Yeah,
That inspires me on a daily basis.
it's good.
Yeah.
I've
Oh,
changed I've turned the tables on you,
you
haven't
have,
I?
and now I can't stop talking. So we're just coming to the last couple of questions. And the one question is, if you could do any job in the world, what job would you do?
Oh, it's this one, isn't it? It's the one
Easy.
that I've got. Yeah. I mean, I've toyed with this in the past. I thought, would I want to be like a judge?
Ah,
You'd be really constrained to be a judge, wouldn't you? And
yeah.
you'd definitely not be able to kind of have any innovation in how you're
Yeah,
judging things. But I want to be a politician. I think that'd be a nightmare, horrendous, absolutely. I do feel for them. I think it's just a
yeah,
horrendous job. And I know people say, oh, they're only in it for power and money. I think most politicians come from a good place that they've
yeah,
started off. They want to make
yeah.
changes. So I'm going to
Stick,
stick with the
stick,
job
not
I've got.
twist.
I'm immensely with it, and I think it's such a privilege to be in this
Oh,
place. So, yeah.
brilliant. And I asked you in my questions ahead of the interview to tell me what question have I missed. And your question was, which I'm now going to ask you, how do you look after yourself when you're looking after others? So, what are your recommendations for people? What do you find that works?
I think you've got to kind of keep um, a real grounding in a sense of you're still doing what you want to do. You've got that choice at the end of it. I've heard leaders tell me sometimes I feel trapped. I don't know what to do. I don't feel happy in work. But I think if you keep in your mind you have got choices, you can choose to walk away and choose to do things differently. I think that for me is knowing that is really important, and also taking time to do something completely different.
Yeah,
You see me cycling about
I
York
do see you
sometimes,
cycling.
sometimes without even a helmet on. But I love just kind of getting out, doing something
Yeah,
else, just doing something different. And that will be different for every person, won't it? Reading,
yeah,
going to see some art.
yeah,
But I think keeping in mind that at the end of the day, as a leader, you're in a very privileged position and you can make changes and choices for yourself if you really are not happy.
yeah.
It's a very
I love
freeing thing, that, isn't it?
it is very freeing. And what a perfect place to end, like on that. I feel like mic drop about freeing. So just to say, Sarah, I've absolutely loved having this conversation with you. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I know a
Thank
lot of
you
people are
very
going to
much for
get a lot
inviting
from
me.
this.
I've
Yeah,
really enjoyed it. Thank you, Jen.
been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.